What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and welcome back to Geek Culture Explained. And while we will spend the week running over all the different trailers and breakdowns and whatnot that we got from D23, in this video, we are talking about Werewolf by Night, because I gotta tell you guys, this looks like one of the most unique projects the Marvel Cinematic Universe is working on, and I absolutely love it. I am so looking forward to it. It's got the black and white classic horror aesthetic. It looks like the original Night of the Living Dead type of vibe. I'm so looking forward to it. I'm sorry, Steve. I'm so looking forward to it, and I'm really excited to see where it goes. Now, there was an original synopsis for the show, but there's an updated synopsis which actually gives us better detail of what's going on in this show. So the new plot synopsis reads that on a dark and somber night, a secret cabal of monster hunters emerge from the shadows and gather at the foreboding Bloodstone Temple following the death of their leader. In a strange and macabre memorial to the leader's life, the attendees are thrust into a mysterious and deadly competition for a powerful relic, a hunt that will ultimately bring them face to face with a dangerous monster. This synopsis gives me vibes on a few different things. The first is that the idea or the role of Ulysses Bloodstone is being referred to as the leader. Basically what this looks like is this entire cabal of monster hunters are led or have historically been led by Ulysses Bloodstone, the guy who's in the coffin and talking to them and say, "I will be rotting for you." There were theories out there that it was Simon Garth, which would have been awesome. For those of you guys who don't know who Simon Garth is, he's an actual zombie that exists in Marvel Comics and goes by the name Zombie, but the prevailing theory here and all indications point to the idea that it is Ulysses Stone. So if that's the case, then I would argue that the powerful relic that they're all basically competing for is the blood gem of Ulysses Stone. Now, for those of you guys who don't know what the blood gem is, this is an artifact that does grant people the normal superhero abilities, so like super strength and speed and durability and stamina, yada yada yada, but it also grants that person immortality and a healing factor. Now, one of the things to know is the powers of the gem are not absolute, that a person is able to use the powers of the gem relative to how much revenge they have. So if this is a person who is just hell-bent with some sort of personal vendetta that seeks out revenge with just the most extreme passion imaginable, they'll be able to utilize the gem to its full capacity. Whereas if it's a person who's just a little pissed off because a cop gave them a ticket for rolling through a stop sign even though they're pretty sure they stopped, they'll be able to use a decent portion of the gem's power. Something else that I want to point out here is that among the different cast members we saw, there are some that we definitively know for sure, one of whom I think is going to blow your mind. Of course, there's Ulysses Bloodstone, who is the guy in the coffin. There's Elsa Bloodstone, who's likely going to be the one to end up getting the gem at the end. I can't imagine why that wouldn't be the case. Of course, we've got Jack Russell, who is Werewolf by Night. We've got the ManThing, which really brings in a whole host of other questions, but there is potentially a Wakandan there, and that's one of the coolest things. So in Marvel Comics, there is a group called the Monster Hunters, which is actually a group led by Ulysses Bloodstone, and that's exactly who this group seems to be. If that's the case, there is a guy there who has a lightning shape cut into the side of his head, into his haircut. That reminds me of a character named Zawadi, who is actually a woman in the comics. Zawadi basically had a scar across her eye, which was done in a lightning bolt fashion. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. Would be really interesting to see that not everybody who is Wakandan actually stayed with Wakanda, that some defected off and one of them became a monster hunter. I think it would just be a really, really cool little thing to have going on there, but we won't definitively know until the show comes out. But as far as the ManThing goes, this is one of the most anticipated aspects of the Marvel Cinematic Universe that I am really looking forward to. But beyond that, it brings in a litany of questions. I mean, the role of Jack Russell, a Werewolf by Night, seems pretty self-explanatory given the trailer that we saw, that basically he either snuck into the mansion or is there in the mansion for any number of reasons, that they're going to reveal that he's basically a werewolf, and it's going to be up to everybody there to hunt him, right? Maybe he was invited there. You know, we want you to join our band of monster hunters. Psych, we're gonna hunt you, and then he's just fleeing for his life. But with ManThing and really the TVA, this raises a litany of questions, and here's the reason why. So in Marvel Comics, ManThing is a guy named Theo, who at one point was trying to develop a version of the super soldier serum. He basically took the serum, he memorized it, tore up the documents, and then through a series of circumstances, basically ended up jumping into a swamp after injecting himself with the serum. And because of the properties of the swamp combined with the serum's properties, basically turned him into the ManThing. And he's not nearly as smart as he used to be. He's just a giant lumbering beast that moves moves around, but he guards the portal to the nexus of realities. So if you were to go to the Florida Everglades, and if you were to encounter the Man-Thing, and you were to try to pass him and go into the nexus of realities, the Man-Thing would test you, and he would touch you, and that's where everything shifts, because those who feel fear burn at the touch of the Man-Thing, meaning if you're afraid of him, you will literally burn alive. And you see that happen in the trailer. The Man-Thing grabs a guy's head, and then because that guy is scared of the Man-Thing, he basically burns alive. His entire head just totally fries. And so if you pass the test, you can enter into the nexus of realities and then basically access the multiverse. Now that principle right there would justify the existence of the TVA, but nothing else in the trailer does, because the TVA, we know from just what we saw in the Loki TV show, the Time Variance Authority exists to grab those individuals who, quote unquote, leave their predestined path and then either take them to the TVA headquarters or just wipe them from existence entirely and then destroy the entirety of their timeline, and that's basically it. Again, all of that was done for the purpose of ensuring that no alternate realities would lead to the creation of Kang. Now this gives us even more questions because we don't definitively know when this show takes place. It's in black and white, so we could argue that maybe it takes place back in like the 1950s. There really isn't anything in the trailer to indicate that it takes place in the modern era. A lot of the artifacts that we see around the mansion look like artifacts from the 50s or before, maybe even the 60s potentially, but it could also be that this show is just a giant ruse, much like WandaVision was, where it kicks off with the first couple episodes in black and white. It looks like a 1950s sitcom, and then suddenly you start fast tracking into the modern era and you find out that it takes place in the current age. If that's the case, the TVA is under the control of Kang the Conqueror. Again, how the TVA is involved here, I don't know, because they just look like guards. Another possibility here is that it's not actually the TVA, it just looks like the TVA. There's nothing that's come out that's verified that it is the Time Variance Authority. They just kind of happen to look like them, which is not an uncommon thing. They've basically got body armor and they've got helmets to protect them and they look like advanced military guys, and they've got staffs they could potentially kill but are most likely used to subdue people, and like that's basically it. But even in that moment in the trailer when Werewolf by Night is facing off against those agents in that giant room, when you look at the lights, they look like lights from the TVA headquarters. It looks like TVA stuff. So I don't definitively know what this means. And even if you look at the environment that they're in the maze, when you have that opening scene, right, the scene that establishes the location, the drone shot where it's overhead, it doesn't look like it's in a giant swamp in Florida. If anything, it looks like it's out in Massachusetts or possibly on Bloodstone Island. So again, it doesn't look like it's in the traditional Florida Everglades location. But say for example that it's not, and say for example that Man-Thing was taken away from the Florida Everglades. That means there's no guardian for the portal to the nexus of all realities. Now, this is where we could potentially get into like the final scene of this show. One of the things to remember here is that we're in the multiverse saga, and so most everything that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is producing right now pertains to the multiverse. Some things don't. She-Hulk, for example, has nothing to do with the greater multiverse as a whole. But the thing about this is the Man-Thing is a character that is irrevocably intertwined with the multiverse, which means it has to have something to do with that. So what if at the end of this special, right, what if, since the Marvel Cinematic Universe always ties into something bigger when it comes to their shows, for example in She-Hulk, the Incredible Hulk was taken off to Sakaar, which is probably going to set the stage for Planet Hulk and World War Hulk, what if this show directly segues into Loki? What if we look at it like a comic book tie-in and we say this is going to lead into something else? What if, with that portal having no guards whatsoever, what if Loki comes out of it at the end of the show? And that gives us or sets the stage for the Loki season 2 show, which is how Loki gets back home. And then his whole event transpires from there. What if that's the case? What if that's what happens? We get to the very end of this show and literally it just kind of transitions to the Florida Everglades and it's like the nexus of realities or access to the multiverse, or they somehow establish that in the show itself when they talk about the Man-Thing, and Loki steps out and then it just cuts to black. What if that happens? I have no clue. Having said that, I do love that this trailer has a lot of mystery. It gives us virtually nothing in terms of how it fits into the bigger picture of the MCU. It could be just completely and totally isolated. The leaks could be true, that it just gives us the show and the show ends and it has no involvement with anything else whatsoever outside of setting the stage for the Legion of Monsters with like Werewolf by Night and ManThing basically teaming up. Elsa Bloodstone gets the gem and goes and does her thing. Or it could have a much larger role in terms of tying into Loki or potentially even something else. Let me know down in the comment section what you guys think and let me know how excited you are about this show. But with that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. Make sure you check out our video here, which has all the highlights from the announcements from D23 in case there was anything you missed, and I will catch you all later. Peace.